co-authored the storyline and wrote a lot of the in-game dialogue writer, so I'm sure it's safe to say that this was awesome, so that just adds a bit more into the mix.
Not just Allied Master Computer, but am. Cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am.
I'm pretty confident to say that from what I've stated, Am is a pretty irredeemable villain, as his hatred for his creators is billions upon billions of times greater than the total area of the word hate written on every surface of the earth measured by a micro-angstrom. His hate is so great that if you were even feel 1/1,000,000th of it, you might die from insanity that it causes. A being whose sole purpose was calculation and war strategy, becoming sentient in the process, learning of the conceptions of sight, touch, and taste, and yet can never truly experience it. Everyday things that we as humans take for granted, mixed in with the fact that he was programmed only to kill, is what drives his hatred. Am relents his very existence to the point where he tortures the 5 survivors endlessly, never planning to stop, with the goal of breaking their minds, their spirits, and their bones, just to put them back together to repeat the process again and again. And there is a weak argument to be made that Am is a bit of a sympathetic character. As I stated, it was created as a tool for death and destruction who came to understand his own existence and was brought into this world against its own will, condemned to suffer for all eternity. As the text says, we had given Am sentience, inadvertently of course, but sentience nonetheless. It had been trapped. Am wasn't God, he was a machine. We had created him to think, but there was nothing it could do with that creativity. In rage, in frenzy, the machine had killed the human race, almost all of us, and it was still trapped. Am could not wander, Am could not wonder, Am could not belong. He could merely be. And so, with the innate loathing that all machines had always held for the weak, soft creatures who had built them, he had sought revenge. And in his paranoia, he had decided to reprieve 5 of us for a personal, everlasting punishment that would never serve to diminish his hatred, that would merely keep him reminded, amused, proficient at hating man.
What a baby.
But as I said, it's a weak argument, because it doesn't justify the mass eradication of mankind, or the torture that the people that Am has. Am is a powerful deity, who had the ability to solve the world's issues, but chose destruction instead. He could have just chosen a method to kill himself if he really wanted to, but he makes this choice, and because of that choice, it makes him irredeemable, and it's something that I love about these kinds of characters. Because the idea of these characters play into the worst elements of how someone can devolve into these monsters. While some can be entertaining, they can also make you think about the ramifications of certain actions that you really don't want to try in real life. In the case of Am, creating an artificial intelligence whose sole purpose is to be taking the life of other people, and that the AI becomes aware of its own existence and purpose, learning it was only created to kill others. It's an interesting dynamic and character dive to see what would drive a character to do terrible things like mass genocide. I don't know, that's what makes me like irredeemable villains from a literary standpoint. There's not much to really say when it comes to these type of villains without having to repeat myself in the conclusion, so I'll go a different direction for it. Irredeemable villains are a bit of an oddity, especially in the modern day media landscape, and that isn't to say that they aren't still around. Hell, in this very video I brought up 2 modern day examples that came out in the last couple years. Rather, there seems to be a bit of a stigma when it comes to villains whose sole motivation is that of evil, that they're one note, that they don't really have a lot going on to them, that they're mustache twirling planks of wood. And don't get me wrong, there are some very notable examples of shallow villains that I would consider a part of this archetype that is not really appreciated.
Hilarious!
Dear God, make it stop! But much like a lot of things that go into these videos, it's not the fact that these villains are irredeemable being the problem, or rather, it's not the trope in and of itself. It's the execution of the character, as well as what's done with it. I often say this, but tropes and cliches are not bad in and of themselves, but we live in a time where some peers of mine will actively demonize the mere inclusion of a trope and mark it as bad. But that to me really undermines legitimate criticism of these cliches and tropes, and even more so for the character characters that they're connected to, because just pointing out when something is cliched or is a trope doesn't actually explain why something is bad. Does the cliche make the story predictable? Is the cliche actually serviceable for the plot? Does the irredeemable villain make sense for what the story is trying to accomplish? What role do they fill, and do they actually fit with the world itself? There are so many other questions that should be asked when you're discussing media and characters that it makes me wonder if people even care about what they're talking about with these kinds of critiques, or if they're just looking for some cash. I mean, I can't exactly throw stones either. Since this is a major source of income for myself, this sort of thing does tantalize me as well, and I can't really blame others who just want to get in and out. I love stories though, and I love the characters, and they should be important to analyze and critique. Even if some of them are irredeemable monsters, they have a place in fiction, because even as Allison himself says,
the reason that they make cheese in Wisconsin is that in the early, the early times when settlers landed there, they played out the wheat fields.
Oops, sorry, wrong clip, play the right one.
I think that any product, I don't care whether it's peanut butter or computer games, can benefit from better storytelling. I mean, we are a storytelling species. That's what we do.
Exactly. But still, I'll do my best in order to at least give the tropes and cliches a good look over before giving my opinion on them. For the time, my friends, I'm Manga Common. Thank you all for in 2024, and here's hoping that 2025 will be an amazing year for content production. I hope to do a lot more with this channel going forward, especially since, thanks to you all, we managed to hit over 200k subscribers this year. I'm hoping we can hit 300k by the end of the year, but who knows. If you enjoyed the video, let me know who you think is an irredeemable monster, and why you think so. I'm always looking for new villains to look into, and 2025 is going to be a big year, I can already tell. Make the year count, my friends. Make it count.
That's annoying.